Hey there, this is Andy Greider, and I am back hosting another episode of Unique this week. And today we have Ryan Long, who is the president and owner and one of the key linchpins in the National Gold Consultant world. Absolutely amazing company with a lot of things that I think, especially if you're an FA, a CFP, somebody who works as a broker dealer or works with a broker dealer, you're going to want to know about what this guy's doing. If you're a CPA, you're going to want to know what this guy's doing. There's a big crowd of people that actually, ironically, Ryan, we'll get to this, don't know about what you do. And that's really their loss, but we're going to change that today. So thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Andy. I really appreciate you having me on today.
It's absolutely my pleasure because it's so much fun to educate people about new stuff. And that's what Unique this week's all about, is getting blue ocean for people and helping them find low-hanging fruit. And we'll get to that also with the FAs and CFPs and crew there, because there's a lot of questions they don't normally ask their people that we can teach them to ask. But talk to me about how you got started with NGC. I understand this is a second generation.
Second generational, born and raised and been sleeping with gold and silver for as long as I can remember, Andy. I've been working parallel with my father for years. He's he's retired off, sand in the toes mentality. But, so I'm on personally year 17, but we go back generations for, it's crazy how, business models adapt over the years, Andy. My mother was a wholesale jeweler for 30 years. So we have extensive connections, but the biggest objection that we had over the years talking with individual clients is, well, I need to talk to my financial advisor, or I need to talk to my insurance professional. So we morphed over the years to, exclusively work with financial advisors, insurance professionals, and that's where we are today.
That's awesome. So, when you look at the name National Gold Consultant and you think about that, people are going to think that you are, if you're thinking about it in the traditional sense, they might say, oh, these guys do coins, or they do collectibles, or they do, the commodity side of gold, silver, et cetera. But you don't. You do something completely different. So can you explain, first of all, this is what it's called and kind of how it works?
Well, it comes down to the root word of consultants. We need to take the biases away and say, hey, we're not there to peddle coins, peddle collectibles. We're there as financial advisors ourselves to solve financial problems. And not all financial circumstances are created equal. So that's where we come in circumstantially to partner with the advisor to get this certain percentage, whether that's qualified, that's in an IRA, or non-qualified. My favorite positioning is they can have physical possession, and the terminology that we have coined, I guess pun intended, wealth insurance. And that's the whole premise behind this. Is it's we take our glasses of mutual funds off. Gold and silver has returns, et cetera, et cetera. I can go down a rabbit trail if we want, but it's all about preserving current purchasing power and capital. That's why we've branded the term wealth insurance and being consultants for that, right?
So when you talk about wealth insurance, you're talking about it around a specific type of gold and silver in a lot of cases. And so let's talk about what that looks like. These are what are called pre-33 gold and silver. Yep. Can you explain what that means for the listener out there that has no idea what I just said?
Yeah, the pre-33, it's essentially the line in the sand, the date and the year the coin was actually minted. And so what we talk about when we talk about with our advisors and their clients, we just talk general circulated or generic circulated pre-1933 coins. So why is it general circulated? Well, we're not talking about collectibles or how shiny or do we care about the mint market? No, that's again, coin peddling versus financial problem solving. Okay. But the premise behind the pre-1933, Andy, this is for your non-qualified possessions that we're actually physically, our brick and mortar is shipping the physical product to the end user. They have possession of it for non-qualified. It's considered a completely private and anonymous transaction. So I paint the story just like going into your bank teller at Wells Fargo. You give them a $1 bill. It's a dollar bill currency, right? and you say, Andy, I want 2 rolls of nickels. Well, there's no reportability behind the scenes. All you're doing is you're converting paper to physical coinage. And that same premise happens here. You're converting your paper to physical coinage that still is legal tender. Therefore, by de facto, it's considered a private, it's that money under that mattress mentality. And it really solves a lot of the wealth insurance type problems we're talking about.
So let's just be clear. So this is something that actually functions as a currency, not a commodity.
That's correct. Yep. The difference between currency and commodity is, these talk about a silver dollar, for example. That's a pre-1933 coin. That's a $1 coin. Obviously, it's got the ounce of silver that we're talking about here, but on paper, I could still go to Walmart right now and spend that coin as $1 and buy a soda pop, or maybe today I need the energy drink for all we know, right? But it's considered currency, whereas a chunk of silver, a chunk of gold, which we do in IRAs, we have to put the commodities inside IRAs. Well, why is that? Well, you have your silent partner IRS that likes to track things so they can tax things. So that's the difference between currency and commodity. Is one is an actual legal tender solution. It's money versus the other is speculative commodity.
Right. And that's a big difference that anybody who's a FA, CFP, CPA, et cetera, that's listening is going to get. They understand qualified, non-qualified. They understand why this would work that way, which is great. But to that end, you also have put together a program for them so they can learn everything. And get to the nitty gritty and learn how that works. So can you talk a little bit about, I know there's an involvement sort of requirement almost that they need to go through this course in order to be a part of what you do. But then let's talk about what this opens up for them too. So let's talk about the course first, and then we'll get to what it opens up.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's intertwined. We had our most recent podcast that just came out, and it talks about what happens if advisors fail to bring up gold and silver to their clients, and it gets real messy if they don't, because on paper, Andy, we're the only licensed and regulated wholesaler that works with advisors. Again, going back to coin peddling versus financial solutions, those are two vastly different things. So we encompass and put a bow on all of our advisors. We've got a platform. Advisors can go to goldandsilveradvisors.com, and we've got a little discovery webinar for them that explains the program we have. It explains what's in it for them. Hey, yes, you do get compensated for it. It's not just out of the generous of your heart, but by doing the right thing, for the client, you also get compensated for it. It kind of goes hand in hand. But by going through this platform we have, it's on-demand training, just like if you remember taking your insurance exam. It's just a couple hours, and it's on demand. You can play and pause, and we tell advisors to continue going through it again, because information and education is power. But a part of that, we have monthly or quarterly mentorship calls for these advisors we have that go through this program that we want to continue to provide ongoing value for advisors to make sure they stay upfront and have that wherewithal with their clients.
Right. Well, and it's important too, because again, this is a conversation most advisors have never had with their client. It's low-hanging fruit. It's a whole other entry point to have another reason for a conversation. So, and again, you get paid for it. So it can be fairly lucrative too. So, talk about, the actual program itself. Is there a cost to the training?
Yeah, we do charge $200 for it. And the rationale behind that is our expenses into it is we brand, we call ourselves a glorified IMO for gold and silver. We're there in the trenches with you. We brand all the marketing materials to you. We've got little whiteboard videos for you, but we actually send you a couple silver dollars that you can have. They're the shiny ones, so you can show and tell. So it's nice and appealing to the client. So our costs, we went through, hey, what should we charge for this? We could charge thousands, or we could charge, next to nothing. And we chose the next to nothing just so it's the barrier of entry isn't there.
Well, exactly. There's a little skin in the game.
Yeah.
And again, they get a show and tell, and they get everything branded to them. So, honestly, as somebody who does marketing, announcer's voice, grab this deal while you can. Before
Ryan not making a whole lot of money on it.
Yeah, I was going to say before Ryan decides that he needs to up that. But anyway, as a consultant, I would tell you to. It's, but I'm thrilled it's where it's at for folks that are wanting to jump in, because it's a profit center you can add to your business essentially, and better serve your clients, help better serve their outcomes, and as you said, solve a lot of financial problems.
Right.
So, let's talk about that part, the financial problems this can solve. Let's talk about what that does and maybe some examples of how this can be used.
Sure. It's you mentioned it's a great, low hanging fruit mentality, Andy, and it really is. We consult with advisors to say, hey, go back to your existing client database. They're the most friendliest to talk to, anyways. Mm-hmm. Obviously, use this as a great recruiting tactic for new prospects and inside of your workshops you do. But in all reality, when you're looking at the financial problems in this, call it highly inflationary, transitory, whatever you want to call it. When I talk to my personal clients and even prospects, I go, well, given this environment we're in right now, what steps and what measures have you taken to protect yourself from inflation, or what's another trillion among friends with government? And they typically they don't have that answer. So that's where then I say, hey, I go back to the history of time of 6,000 years, looking at gold and silver is money. It keeps up with current purchasing power. So our whole concept behind it is we don't put 100% of clients' assets in this product. We talk roughly 10 to 15% of assets. If you look at, and this is really covered in depth in that training we talked about at goldandsilveradvisors.com, but that 10 to 15% will smooth out whether it's a stock market crash, a real estate bubble bursting, or whether that's your dollar's devaluation of purchasing power, which we see every day with our, the PPI, the CPIs, all these things that's devaluing our purchasing power. Gold and silver is there to help offset those other peril type events we can't control.
Right. So let's try to see if we can walk through an anonymous example of somebody that you've done a transaction with recently. I mean, that 10 to 15% is right in keeping with a typical standard rule of precious metals at 10 to 15% hedge against, like you said, market crashes and things like that. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, you know what, I already have, first of all, let's cover two scenarios. One, they come in and they're just ready to jump in with 10 to 15%. What does that look like? How does that work? And then let's move on to another question.
Sure. After that. Well, that whole added saying of possession being 9/10 of the law, in a perfect world, I mean, granted, when we're talking about the baby boom, retirement generation, 75 to 80% of assets are held in 401ks and IRAs, which is in a tax deferred vehicle. It's tough to say, hey, let's hack all those off, and then you pay the taxes now, and then you get physical possession. In a perfect scenario, like we're dialoguing here, is that client, let's just call it a $1 million portfolio, has the ability to clear up funds for $150,000 or so of gold and silver. We'll do a good blend of both participation in gold and silver, and we're going to ship it to the client. They're going to have possession of it. We partner with the advisor to, essentially we help manage that position to know where things are at up and down, and when we have to take some winners off the table and when we need to add to our positions. That's in a perfect scenario. Let's be honest. The average scenario is we have to do a little bit of both, non-qualified and qualified, to make up to that 10 to 15%. And that's very, very doable and very easy.
Yep. Very cool. And I know one of the questions that would run through my mind if I were listening is, how is all this insured? And I know you guys hold some pretty interesting insurance riders. So do you want to explain how that happens?
Yeah, and as far as insurance goes, everything is insured until the clients receive the packages. Okay, that's all covered internally by us and through our insurance. But as far as licensing goes, you could be a real estate professional and offer gold and silver. You could be a life and health advisor. You don't need any extra licensing. This is not a security. Okay, so just like we don't advertise, let's just say, Mr. CFP out there, you're not going to advertise to your client and say, hey, if anything goes wrong, I've got E&O insurance, you could sue. You just don't advertise that, but it's there, for that advisor protection, and rightfully so. Just like a doctor has that malpractice in case he does something wrong, but we don't advertise that. My company, National Gold Consultants, we are the only company in the country that has access for advisors to get E&O insurance specifically for gold and silver. That's not a requirement. I would say 1 in 100 of our advisors actually tap into that. It's if you work with a broker dealer, yes, that'll be a requirement, just for protection. But as far as that goes, Series 65s and below, CFPs, you don't need it. But it's that, we work with one of the largest providers in the entire country. They don't like us advertising their name, but you would recognize from their commercials and the jingles they have. But like I said, we have an exclusive agreement with them that advisors have to work with my organization because we've been vetted for years upon years to be a solid solution for this.
Right. There's a lot of confidence. And that's one of the reasons why, and then beyond that fact, I always have liked the analogy I've heard you use in the past in newsletters and outreach. And that's another thing to mention for the FAs, CFPs. There's a lot of that going on too. A lot of marketing fodder, a lot of thought starters and everything else that Ryan and his team produce. But the thing I've heard you say there numerous times is buying from you is like buying from the Ford factory versus the Ford dealer, the used car dealer, or worse yet, the guy under the shade tree.
Right.
So, there's a lot of different levels to this, as you pointed out before, about coins and about collectibles and about, we buy gold stores. And you can go down the line pretty far and be massively removed from what they're going to experience with you. So, give a little bit of background there if you can. And how did you get to that position? Is it because of the 2-generational history or 3-generational history?
Yeah, it's a lot of it is all who you know, how you're set up. Some of these, if you look at a retail company out there and they're advertising, where does that advertisement money come from? Well, it's going to be installed in that price that product the client is going to buy. But the biggest thing is that licensing and to know that you're dealing with a source that is, we're advisors like you all out there. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be, we're going to be implementing and patting you on the back of the IUL you just did with your client. I think it's a great fit, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and things like that. We're advisors ourselves, but as far as pricing goes, Andy, an advisor, if you look at, the thousands of transactions we've had and the thousands of advisors that we work with, I can't think of any cases that price ever has been an issue because you're dealing directly to the source. This conversation you and I are having, Andy, is the marketing that we do. We're not on TV to do that because we don't have to, and we're not interested in that. Right. So you're buying directly from the source. Pricing will never be an issue.
What it is it's a white glove brand.
Yep.
That's the key and again, as as a professional myself in marketing and insurance and in finance as well, I want to be able to help people with the absolute best quality representation I can bring. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the show, because we understand that is the differentiator really in the end. Is you can't really, cream rises and you guys are definitely the cream. There's, in an industry that has a lot of dirt, potentially, and at least a lot of black eyes. Maybe it's not all justified, but it's got a lot of black eyes. So there's some really nice things that I see happening there. And then the last part of this that I would add and sort of end with is, let's talk about what it takes for somebody to get involved with you. There's the goldandsilveradvisors.com, and they go there, they sign up for a course for $200, a couple hours worth of work. They get their silver coins that they can flash and show, and plus they're kind of neat to have. Right. And then on top of that, what happens from there?
It's a really automated thing that my office, as soon as you as the advisor signs up for that course and the curriculum, it's a pretty much bam, you're going to get contacted from my office. You're going to be talking with one of my guys or gals that's going to run you through if you have any troubleshooting with that. But also the reason why they're going to call is to obviously get your print materials so we can brand that materials to you and get your address of where we're sending the silver dollars to. So after that, we're going to monitor, where you are in this training. We've had individuals of, I brought up gold and silver already to my client, and now I got to go through this training real quick because I'm meeting with them again tomorrow. And they go through this training, and they make $5,000-$10,000 on a quick transaction in a matter of 24 hours. So that's how fast, and gold and silver, it realistically is only as complicated as we try to make it. It just comes down to the system and how it works. and the 2 to 3 hours of training covers all of that. But, my office isn't, again, I go back to that IMO for gold and silver. We're going to be contacting you of, hey, as far as marketing goes, do you want to put a gold and silver workshop on for your clients that we'll speak for? Little things like that we're going to partner with.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And again, it's really, I don't think we need to go too far into the detail here, but any one transaction, you've paid for your course and you've got a nice chunk towards your ROI.
Yeah, the ROI is extremely high compared to the course price. Yeah.
Right. Well, and on top of that, it's really also very high, even in comparison to the effort and the 2 to 3 hours. So it's not just the course price. It's not like you're spending 45 hours or 100 hours or 500 hours to get certified like you might with a series license or something like that. So, let's put it this way. For anybody that's done those, this is the easy part. For anybody that's even taken a life exam, this is the easy part. 2 to 3 hours versus 40. Right. So again, I would say very honestly, just from my own experience and having worked with Ryan and his team, you're talking about a lot of decorum, a lot of professionalism, and a lot of ability to make things work. As you mentioned at the very beginning of this, it's the consultant mindset without the sales mindset. So it's not about the sale, it's about getting the right thing put in place and letting them choose to do it. Right. Which is what I love about you guys, to the nth degree. So if there's anybody that needs more contact information, how does somebody get in touch with your office? We can put the numbers up on the screen then too, but just if you want to give a general office number, that'd be great.
A general office number, and actually rings me directly as well. It's area code 763-401-7920. simplenationalgoldconsultants.com. Mention that you saw us on this podcast, so we can have Andy to thank, and we can go from there.
It's absolutely my pleasure to have you here, Ryan. Thank you so much for being such a fountain of information. And really, honestly, educating a lot of people on things they don't know about, which is what the whole point of this show is, but you're like the ideal guest for this. So thank you. Appreciate
it. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So my name's Andy Grider, and I want to thank you for tuning in yet again for another episode of Unique This Week. We have a YouTube channel up under uniquenessispower.com. And I will tell you flat out that one of the best parts of this show is getting to help other people accelerate their businesses, learn new ways to market, find cool new tools that are out there, whatever it might happen to be. And in this case, if you know a CPA, if you know a CFP, if you know an FA, and they don't know about goldandsilveradvisors.com, you're going to be doing them a huge favor by turning around and telling them about it. And again, Ryan mentioned it earlier. You could be a real estate professional dealing with high-end real estate. You could be somebody who sells yachts or planes for a living. You could be a high-end car dealer. Any of those people have that kind of relationship with the client. So think about who you know. Pass this on to them. You're going to be doing them a huge favor. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.